Anybody who has watched any of my other videos will know that I have got a number of flat top guitars, and have selected them and collected them and gigged with them and stuff over many years, getting to know the sort of instrument that that suits me. But some years ago, probably about 12, 13, 14 years ago, I started getting interested in flat tops. I'd never really taken them seriously, but they are such a beautiful design, and of course they have such a different kind of sound and projection. And I just thought I'd talk about the three Archtops that I own now. Way back in the 70s, I had a Hofner, a German Hofner Archtop, which I really wish I kept. I bought it for £15 and I sold it for 20. It was a cutaway. It actually had a beautiful sunburst and a very reasonable neck. I can't remember which particular model. One of the slightly higher ones. But I used it just for bottleneck. What did I know? Then of course David Rawlings kind of showed us all about what an Archtop could do, apart from all the beautiful jazz that developed really from those instruments. And of course when they replaced the banjo in dance band orchestras, the Archtop was king. But I'm talking about mine today. This is my Harmony Monterey, a mass-produced instrument that, I've got some notes here. It was in production from 1952 to 1972, and this is one from spring 1968. I saw it on eBay in 2006 when I was waiting to go into hospital for a heart operation, and I contacted the seller and said I really would like to buy that guitar, but I'm going into hospital and I don't know whether I'm going to come out, and you know, could you possibly hold it for me? And he said, yes, of course, that's okay. And so a month or so afterwards, when I got out of hospital after having them replumb me, I contacted him and he said, whereabouts are you? I was just about the other end of the UK, and he said, oh, I'll bring it down for you. And bless him, he brought it down, and another earlier one for me to look at. But it was this one I loved, and he was selling off his collection of, I think, 150 Harmony guitars. Wish I'd had that access nowadays. But anyway, he brought this down. It was in perfect condition. It's got 2 marks on it, which is, I dropped an ornament on it when it was on a stand. I haven't needed to have it set up or anything. The tuners work fine. They're a bit primitive, but they're fine. It has some funny little marks around on the back, and he explained to me that when they were made, they were dipped or whatever, or sprayed, and then put on a chain to chuck through the factory to the next procedure. And the chain sometimes slapped against the back, which sounds completely logical. It's not an expensive guitar. I think in the time that it was new, it was probably bought for about $70, and I paid considerably more than that, but I still think I got a bargain. And so that is my lovely Harmony. Now, it's got a birch back. It's got this strange sunburst arrangement which I find extremely attractive, and it was designed to be a rhythm box in a dance band, and for that I'm sure it would do just as well as more expensive ones. So not an awful lot of bass. The bass is there, but when you're playing that kind of music, all you need is that percussive. It's effectively a tuned hi-hat, I always think, but it's it's got them, but there we go. So now I'm going to move on. As I developed my interest, I retired in 2007 and started thinking, right, I will learn Western swing and American songbook stuff. Well, it didn't quite happen, but I still have hopes. And so I went for lessons to a gentleman who had an Epiphone Emperor, a 30s Epiphone Emperor, I think, and a 1934 Gibson L-5, still a 16-inch body. And I fell in love with it. I thought it was the most beautiful instrument I'd ever seen. And so I started looking around for something. Couldn't afford an L5 of that sort of vintage, of that sort of quality. I believe he sold it for about £6,000 shortly after, and I was tempted. But I found this one on a website in Seattle by a specialist dealer, and this is a 1934, actually it's a 1935 model. It's a 1934 Gibson L-4. Has the original tuners, which are awful, kind of 1-to-1 ratio it seems. It's probably not the original pick guard, but that doesn't matter. Got a few little marks around which they've tried to cover up. Wasn't very happy with the company that sent it to me, because I inquired about the situation with HM Customs and Excise, who were very, very kind to me and said, because of its age, you don't need to pay excise duty or whatever, and the vendor should clearly mark a number on the packing, so when it comes in, Customs and Excise will understand exactly what it is and put it straight through and not charge you. And he didn't do that, so it cost me a fair amount more, and he was not interested in giving me any compensation. And also he set it up, which meant basically he filed off all the frets, so I did have to have it refretted, but I had it done extremely tastefully. And this is the sound of 1934 to me. These guitars are have effectively exactly the same body as the Gibson L5. I've always thought that that was maple. It might be birch. A lot of L5s were made in birch. When I'm just playing it now, I could feel that resonating onto my body. It has half a tree trunk as a neck. The L5 necks, I believe, had 3-piece necks, and of course they had the beautiful sunburst all over, and this just has a sunburst on the front, but it does have the Nick Lucas inlays. It is remarkable that you can see Gibson guitars, Archtop guitars from the beginning of the 20th century. I had an L1 Archtop, or an L3, it wasn't quite clear, and solid as a rock. I didn't, no bother about neck resets or anything like that. They just built to last, as is this. So a little bit harsh. But you can still play. Work on that. The treble is a little bit nasal, I feel, but it is what it is, and I love what it is. And then we have my newest acquisition. I bought myself an Eastman Archtop guitar in 2007, so it came after the Harmony, but before that one. And I had to pre-order it, and I waited quite a long time for it, and I was thinking, would I ever want to amplify it, plug it in? So it was recommended that I bought one with a floating pickup, and their design was great, good floating pickup, a pick guard with the tone and volume switches very subtly put underneath, so you didn't touch them at all unless you needed them. But I ordered it in what they call the classic finish, and mine turned out to be rather rosy coloured, and every time I picked it up I thought it looks like an electric guitar, and I got a bit of a problem with that. I always wanted a Sunburst AR805, same body, non-cutaway, and finally this year I managed to find one on eBay, and again, because I still can't travel too far, he brought it down from the Midlands for me, on spec, and we did a deal. It has had some minor problems because it's been in storage for a long time, and I think it's got very hot and very cold, but a little bit of work from my favourite tech, Dave Walsh at Eternal, and it's lovely. Now this must be built a lot lighter than the Gibson, although it's in the image of the Gibson. It's got a flatter radius, it's the first thing I notice. Much shallower neck, which is fine. It's a 1 3/4 nut, which normally would give me a bit of a problem. These all seem pretty okay for me, but it's a different style, and it's a lot more resonant. I should say that these are all strung with nickel bronze, D'Addario nickel bronze NY or something. 56 to 12, which is nice. A lot more sustain on this. Lots of resonance. The back is working away beautifully. Very alive, and for a guitar that was built in 2007 and hasn't really been played much, although it did need quite a setup because of the way it has not been well stored. A few little, it's actually a little bit of checking on the or cracking on the finish, which is rather similar to the 1934 Gibson. So it's just. Oh, I'm in love with this, so my archtops are being rather neglected at the moment, and I'm having lovely fun playing with these, and this one in particular. So that's it. I just wanted to talk about archtops, which were important because they replaced the tenor banjo in dance bands, and the L5, this was an L4 which was being made from about 1912 up until 1956, but changed an awful lot. It originally came out in 1912 as a 12 fret with a round hole. It changed from round hole in 1934 to F hole, and it replaced the L5 because the L5 went up to 17 inches wider. That battle about getting bigger and bigger and bigger guitars. So this is not a rare one, but it's just on the cusp of the change of that. And the L5 came out in 1922, and that really was the one to beat as far as all the other archtop makers like Epiphone and Stromberg and Vega and so many others. And it's a beautiful piece. It's my oldest piece now,